Well, hello everybody, and welcome to this techUK talk at London Tech Week session. I am Sue Daley, Director of Technology and Innovation at techUK, and it's my absolute pleasure to chair this conversation today, where we're talking about a new era of UK data governance, thinking through what some of the opportunities and challenges ahead may be. This is a really important time and a key discussion really right now, given where we are today and given where we might be heading. And I've got two great speakers to talk through where they see the world right now and also to talk about what might lie ahead. So we're really looking at, following the UK's granting of a data adequacy agreement, publication of the UK's national data strategy, and the upcoming appointments of the new Information Commissioner. There's a lot of change ahead and perhaps a new era of data governance for and in the UK. So we want to explore a little bit about what that future might hold and where the opportunities, but also what are some of the challenges that might lie ahead. But of course, also to look at, what that means for the UK. So I'm really honoured to be joined by two leading data experts on what they see as important to get this right, an important conversation, and what could some of the issues that we might need to address as we move forward. So I'm going to ask them both to introduce themselves before we kick off this discussion, but really looking forward to our conversation. So Clint, maybe I could start with you.
Yeah, hi, Sue. Hi, everybody. So my name's Clint Hook. I'm the Director of Data Governance for Experian UK. So it's my responsibility to look after everything from data quality through to how we make decisions around data throughout the business. So great to see you.
Great to have you with us. Thanks, Clint. And Richard, brilliant to have you with us too. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, Sue. Hi, Clint. Hello, everyone. So I'm Richard Cumbley. I'm a partner, a lawyer at Linklaters in London. I look after the technology practice at Linklaters around the world. That's about 100, 120 lawyers around the place. My own personal practice is almost exclusively focused on data and the regulation of data. And I've been doing that for, nearly getting on for 25 years now. So this is I think the fourth data regime I'm about to embark on in the United Kingdom. Very exciting. Nearly as exciting as the first. Nearly as exciting.
Wow. Well, I'm sure everyone watching will agree with me that we've got great experience here and we're going to get some great insights. Richard, that's amazing to think this is the fourth, but perhaps we can touch on a little bit of that
going forward. It's terrifying, actually.
So perhaps before we think about what the fourth might look like, Richard, let's start with where we are today and where we are now. And I would be really keen, and perhaps Richard, start with you, and then Clint, love your views as well, of where do you see the UK right now in terms of data governance? What are some of the key issues or focus for you in terms of where we are right now?
So at the moment, the UK is caught. It's an opportunity, but it's caught between two competing big issues. On the one hand, the UK has just achieved an adequacy finding from the European Union, and that's really quite an important thing for the UK to achieve. The UK is disproportionately important internationally, both in terms of data storage and data transfer. A lot of data passes through our shores, and we earn money as a result of that. So enabling the free flow of data into the UK and out again is disproportionately important for the UK economy. So that adequacy fund, which makes it really seamless for us to deal in data terms of the EU, that seems like quite an important economic upside to try and maintain. EU has said that they're going to keep that pretty much under constant review, has a 4-year time window, but they're going to keep it under constant review. So you've got that one thing. And on the other hand, obviously, we have this concept of a Brexit dividend. What are we going to do differently from the EU now that we are no longer form part of that big European club? Can we find a better way to regulate data? So on the one hand, you want to do things a little bit differently, maybe liberate some freedoms in the economy, whilst not losing that important adequacy thing if you can do both. So that's the difficult balancing act that the UK government's got with these reforms that they're talking about.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll come on to that in a moment in terms of the consultation process that's now been kicked off. But Clint, be interested in your view as well in terms of where you see us right now, obviously in terms of data governance, but perhaps UK's use of data and data landscape that we're all really living in right now?
Sure. So, so I would say there are three particular areas that I think we need to look at as we move forward, and perhaps that are influencing, or perhaps symptoms of where we are today. In terms of regulation and everything that Rich has just been talking about. So the first one, I guess, I would talk about is innovation, and making sure that as businesses we're able to innovate. Clearly it's incredibly important. It's why we're all here talking about it right now. But I think there has been some nervousness and some uncertainty around how data can be used, and I think that's right now that's not going away just yet. I think there's a little lack of clarity around the use of different legal grounds around the use of data, and we need to make sure, of course, that we're protecting consumers every step of the way, and people need to know that we're treating their data with respect. I think that's a really important concept that we need to bear in mind. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we also understand what the guardrails are really clearly, which sort of brings me on to my next point. So it's around the implementation of data governance in the UK. And I guess this is an observation from talking to a number of my sort of peers in a number of other companies. I think governance often is seen very much as a compliance requirement. I really do not see it that way at all. I think governance has the ability to be a real driving force within your business, to help innovation, to feed innovation, to help your product managers understand what they can and can't do with the data. I would see, for example, in our organization, our data managers are just as likely to turn around to a product manager and explain or suggest new ways of using the data safely and securely and appropriately, rather than simply saying, look, no, you can't use this information for this particular purpose. We have to have that dialogue between the people who want to use the data, analysts or product guys, and the people who own the data, to make sure we're really using it to its most effectiveness. And I see governance is very much part of that. Having good accountability around the use of it and decision making is all important. The third area I think we really do need to drill into is skills. Unfortunately, we can't all have Richard next to us when we're talking about what we're going to do with the next piece of data that we have being brought into the business. So we've got to rely on people to make the right decisions, and that means ensuring they have the right skill set to be able to do so, whether that be sort of the data literacy side of things, but also good understanding of what the data regulations are telling us, but what the guardrails and the principles by which we should be working. And these are all things that I know a number of businesses that I speak to are working through. But I think we've got quite a long way to go still, as industry, to get that right.
I suppose that enables a conversation, right? Though, and having the conversation is really, really important. And I'm thinking about the conversation now that has been launched around the public consultation that is now out around possible data reforms that we saw launched on Friday the 10th of September by UK government. Big, large document, right? And I'm sure a lot of people on this call are still looking at it and still going through it. And I'm sure you both are too, or maybe you've read it many, many times. But I would be interested, perhaps, Clint, I'll go to you first, and then to Richard, see, from what you've read and from what you've seen already, overall reflections on the consultation document itself. What stands out for you, or is there anything that's there that you were expecting to see and isn't? I know that's a tough ask because it's about 150 pages, but be interested in your views.
First of all, still digesting it, as you say, large document, lots to go at. I think there's a few things that I'd certainly welcome, and I think there are some notifications around the use of data for research and development, which I think it's worth us exploring more and being clear as we come out through the consultation exactly what that means for business, not just for the scientific community, as a lot of the conversation leans towards in the paper, but absolutely, it's great to see that in there, and it's great to see us being clear about how we can use that for innovation. It will help alleviate some of the concerns I think that I was talking about earlier. I'm really pleased to see this concept of a whitelist. This idea that we can actually, again, provide true guardrails to people to say, look, actually, you can just crack on. I mean, so if I look at the fraud industry, or the anti-fraud, I should say, industry, in the UK, having the ability to quickly turn around ways in which we can, combat fraud that's going on is so important. We've got to be able to react very, very quickly. Otherwise we get left behind. And I think having a little bit more freedom around areas like that, fantastic. That really does put us in a good position across the board. Third one, I think it was great to see a number of comments in there about this shouldn't be a box ticking exercise. This should be about making sure people understand what the principles are, why we need the protections for the purposes of looking after people and their data. It really is important. But so let's not just treat it as that. Have I filled in this document? Let's really embed the thinking around privacy, into our organisation. So it's great to see that in there. You know what? In terms of missing, I've not spotted anything yet. So I'll keep looking. But at the moment, I am encouraged certainly by what we see within the document.
Yeah, and it's perhaps an unfair question because I know a lot of people are still digesting it, which we are as well, and of course. But Richard, love to get your views as well. What's your take on the consultation document out there, and is there anything that you were expecting to see that perhaps you didn't see there, or something you think might be missing? Because this is a conversation, right? The consultation is launching what I think it has to be it has to be a very thorough conversation because there's a lot in there, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Look, it's not just one document. We're focusing on the main consultation document. There's also 30 pages of pretty detailed economic analysis on what the government thinks the implications of these measures would be if they were brought in, which is in itself is pretty fascinating. So let's start with the things that are there, and I'll go back to my points at the beginning. What you can see in this package of potential reforms is the government weighing up those two competing interests and trying to find a way to navigate between delivering some of that Brexit dividend whilst also not losing best they can the adequacy finding. Interestingly, though, it's the first thing to talk about in terms of what's in there. In that economic analysis, probably the document that no one is getting to just yet, there is an attempt to value both the upsides of these reforms to the UK economy as a whole, and also the costs of the loss of adequacy. And on the upsides, I think there's a benefit to the UK economy of about 1.45 billion over 10 years. And the downside of loss of adequacy is just over 400 million, again, over 10 years. Government's looking for feedback on both those points. And I'd encourage listeners to this, watchers of this video, to have a look at that and maybe give feedback. The way that the costs of the loss of adequacy are counted is based purely on the costs of implementing a replacement data transfer mechanism with Europe called standard contractual clauses, literally putting them out, filling in the details, getting a bit of legal advice, signing them, and putting them back in a drawer. That's the cost that's been added up. And I think in light of particularly Schrems 2, a lot of people who are listening to this will be familiar with Schrems 2, they'll be thinking, well, hold on, we now know, because the ECJ tells us we have to, when we're sending data from the Europe to somewhere that will be inadequate, like the UK, if we lost adequacy, we'd have to do a transfer impact assessment as well. And that's another big piece of labour that would need to be factored into our costs. And there's always the risk that if you do that impact assessment, you might decide you can't share data with the UK. What are the costs of that? That isn't currently obvious in that economic analysis. It would be really great if people who we agree with that view or think I've missed some things, we're chipping in as part of the consultation exercise on that point, because that seems to me to be important so government can make a good judgment on that point, because it's key. That's the first thing that's there that I think is worth talking about. The second it is the bit more on the box ticking exercise that Clint mentioned. The current regime in the UK has these concepts of data protection officers, data protection impact assessments, Article 30 records. There's all this kind of compliance infrastructure that UK GDPR says you have to have. And the government has, I think, come up with a really great idea that says, you know what, get rid of all of those, let's not make them mandatory, let's create a bigger concept, an overarching concept of a privacy framework, privacy accountability, call it that if you like, that might involve those things where appropriate, but might not. And that, for a lot of activities in the businesses, small businesses are engaging with, is a really great way of making our compliance and dealing with consumers proportionate. I think that's a really great initiative, and you can see again that it's balancing that reform versus loss of adequacy difficult point to try and address both audiences. I think that's a really neat idea and to be applauded. And the final thing that maybe is interesting on things that are in there, got some changes to the way the Information Commissioner is run. In particular, as a sign that the Information Commissioner is being reeled in a little bit. We get some sense that the Information Commissioner might be subject to some statutory guidance or some guidance by ministers about how they should prioritise their activities. And I think some people remember on in discussion the difficulties with the independence of regulators being an issue that the Europeans really care about when thinking about adequacy findings. Any sense that the regulator is no longer independent, they can be overseen and guided too closely by government, will be looked at really closely by the EU. So that's the third thing that's in there I think is interesting. I'll pick one thing that isn't in there because I don't want to go on too long. You guys will get bored to tears. It is the fourth time, right? I've thought about this. So one of the things that's not in there that I was kind of hoping we might see is a specific item that might appear in this white list. I was really hoping that we'd see it to be clearly identified next time around that training sets, the creation of training sets for the use in artificial intelligence, that actually that was a legitimate interest and could be done with limited notification, definitely wouldn't need consent, had no legal effects on people, so it wouldn't fall inside the automated decision-making guidance the provision that currently exists. The clarity that training sets, crucial in developing new algorithms, that would not fall inside some of the more difficult requirements of the GDPR. We might see that in the white list, but I would like to see that called out at this stage.
Well, first of all, thank you, Richard, for giving people a few things to go and look at in the document and signposting and there are many more, right, but some of the issues that are raised in that document. So thank you for that. And just thinking about it more broadly, because obviously that will be a big part of the conversation now during the public consultation, those issues and much, much more. But just thinking about the broader conversation that we're having in the UK as well around data and the role of data. And you just mentioned, how data sets could enable, algorithms and AI systems. We've been talking about the power of data to, help people in their everyday lives and the economy and society, particularly as we rebuild and regrow. Getting a data governance approach to Clint's point as well, that is of course balanced, but it encourages data innovation and encourages people to think about how they could use data. It's going to be will open up opportunities, right, and benefits that could help businesses and citizens. And I think that's an opportunity, right, to explore as well as looking at the devil of the detail. I think you would agree, right, Clint, given that the innovation, the opportunities are there, and perhaps there are more opportunities to use data that we don't even know yet.
I absolutely agree. So I mean, first of all, I'd say I'm lucky enough to work for a large organisation who do have a compliance department and also have a data governance department and data office. We spend a lot of time, obviously, given the industry we're in, looking at exactly this and trying to work through the fastest and most efficient way of getting products to market, utilising data. Not all organisations are lucky enough to be in that position, and small organisations in particular, need to be given the freedom to be able to actually, test, learn, create something on the basis that they've made an assessment that the use of the data is in the interest of the data subject, the person that the data ultimately belongs to. That assessment has to be there. Of course it does. We need to make sure we're treating it, as I said right at the beginning, treating the data with the respect it deserves. But give people the freedom to be able to test and learn right up front. We're all going to see benefits from that. The person whose data it is will ultimately see benefit from it because they will get a better service from the provider that's utilizing that data or whatever else. I mean, I just if I look at some of the implementations of data governance that we've seen over the number of years now, I look at things like cookies in particular. That has landed us, the way it's been implemented, has landed us in a ridiculous position where we all see a pop-up and we all click, get rid of it, get it off my screen as quickly as possible. That can't be the right way to do things moving forward. And I think actually with a little bit more freedom around, how we test, learn, and develop these things, I think that absolutely gives us an opportunity to find new ways of doing things.
Richard, I suppose new ways of doing things, and perhaps, as you say, potentially getting away from that seeing data protection as a tick box and making it more operational or more real to people. An opportunity you see potentially going forward?
Well, yeah. I mean, part of the issue with data protection, particularly in the UK, is that it's become, I think accidentally, an enormously complicated legislative landscape. And depending on how you count them, you've got 5 or 6 different relevant pieces of legislation to work out what as a consumer you should be worried about and what you can and can't do as a business, plus pages and pages and pages of underlying guidance for the information. I mean, information which is great at producing detailed guidance. It's fantastic for someone like me who's invested in the subject. But for businesses, maybe SMEs, trying to work out what they should and shouldn't do because they're trying to comply, of course they are. It's really, really hard. So a consolidation, a little bit of simplifying, maybe some summaries of for some SMEs would be an enormous step forward. So I was hoping we might see a consolidation as well as these reforms, just to make the whole subject area just a bit easier to navigate, frankly.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I completely agree. I think the idea of a principle based system or framework that allows people to basically think for themselves and establish, okay, am I doing the right thing here? I can make that judgment and I can prove that I'm making that judgment appropriately, but then gives people the freedom to move forward. I think is absolutely the sort of direction we'd like to see ourselves in the UK.
So as we've looked at where we are, we've looked at where we might be heading. I'm just thinking about how do we get this right? And are there any potential, are there any challenges? Are there any really key issues that you think we need to be really mindful and consider really carefully going forward? Of course, Richard, you've already mentioned the issue of the importance of the adequacy agreement. I'm just interested in other challenges or issues that you think we need to consider moving forward. Perhaps Richard, start with you.
So I think the two. The first is, as many people will know on listening to this, there's a big Supreme Court decision coming out latter half of this year, a few months hopefully, involving Google, Lloyd and Google. That decision might establish class action regimes for data, class action opportunities for data incidents, misuse of data, opt-out class action. So default will be people will be in the class, a very US style regime for litigation. And that's not reflected in this consultation document. That regime is not something you'll find reflected in the Data Protection Act or the GDPR or the UK GDPR. It's an evolution of what's written there, and that's not been talked about in Parliament and not been on anyone's election manifesto. Is that really what we were trying to achieve when we passed the DPA and made amendments to the GDPR to create the UK GDPR? Were we really trying to do that? So I was interested not to see that. That's coming down the pipes quite quickly. Depending on how that goes, that will be a big challenge for organisations doing business in the UK. And sad to say, a great opportunity for plaintiff lawyers. A great opportunity. So that's the first thing. The second, looking a little bit longer term, beyond kind of the end of the year, is artificial intelligence, the use of artificial intelligence in businesses for the benefit of consumers, third sector. There is an enormous opportunity there if done safely in the UK to handle data in that area in a way that it drives value for organisations and individuals. At the moment, in Europe, we're seeing new regulations being talked about in relation to AI. Is that really the right way? Can we regulate better rather than more? Interesting proposals in here, but I wonder whether we can push that further and do better. In particular, I worry about the bias inherent in artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is a mirror to us as individuals. Often it tells us the way we really act. I'm not sure at the moment that we've really got to grips with bias in artificial intelligence, and that goes back to my earlier point about training sets and making sure we can create good training sets.
Thanks, Richard. Clint?
So I'd call out one that we haven't actually talked about yet, which is actually about bringing people with us on the journey. So how do we ensure that consumers, people, all of us, are seeing the good news stories around the use of data and not being fed the less good news stories, right? We will always hear about incidents where data is lost or whatever else it might be. And obviously that we need to make sure we're protected against that. But we should really be making sure that consumers and people can see the real benefits that are coming from AI, machine learning we've just been talking about, but just the flow of data more generally. Actually we can ease journeys for people online. There's so much scope to make people's lives easier if we're able to bring them with us. Then I think actually that will really help. So that positive view of data and its use within the UK, I think, is a really important message that we all need to think about how we get across.
Yeah, I agree. So sadly, we're running out of our time. I can't believe it always goes by so quickly. But as we're looking to kind of the future, I'm going to catapult you 4 years into the future. Believe it or not, 4 years into the future, 2025. I mean, it'll be here before we know it, right? I know, Richard, you look scared. I am also quite scared. That doesn't feel that very far away to me. But I'm just thinking, there's a lot in this agenda, right? There's a lot in this discussion, really important discussion that we touched on today. And I'd just be interested in, are there key areas or issues where you would really like to see progress made, where things have really, we really changed, perhaps, Clint, the conversation, or really changed the way we do this by 2025, only 4 years away. But just thinking about it in terms of, if I say 12 months, that just seems, particularly as we've got a big consultation and conversation to be had. But, Clint, maybe I'll start with you in terms of, is it that we have brought people on the journey, that the kind of level of understanding around data, importance of data, and perhaps people are not asking, why are you sharing my data, but why aren't you sharing my data? Is that something that I've been thinking about, of how do we get there? But be interested in your views. Where would you like to see us really change things?
I'm going to run the risk of repeating myself, so apologies first of all, but I think there are two. I think the first one is as a UK industry moving away from data governance as compliance and embracing it, right? Embracing, ensuring that the right people can make the decisions, the people who really understand the data. I often say in this business, if the decision is coming to me, it's probably not the right way of doing things. It really does need to be with the person who understands the data, understands what it's being used for, understands it in detail. So let's move move away from that environment to an environment where people can feel confident in making a decision around the use of the data. So that's the first one. I think any help that can be given around providing those guardrails or to businesses, particularly small businesses who really do need this, who can be in stasis rather than moving forward with some really bright ideas, and really do, I think that really is needed in those areas. So that's the first one, and the other one absolutely is, how do we get that message out? I'd love to see much more coverage of some of the great things that are coming out of the AI and machine learning world. How data can be used to improve things. I mean, we've got some great stories just coming out from COVID, right? So more than ever, we've got people used to understanding and looking at data. We've all been watching the briefings. We've all seen the graphs. We're all becoming a little bit more data literate because of that. So why not take that opportunity and build on it and say, actually, you know what? There are so many other ways that data can enhance our society, and people's lives, and therefore, business more generally.
Yeah, thanks, Clint. Richard, last word to you. 2025, not that far away, right?
No, not that far away. So look, I think the UK's got an amazing opportunity, and we've lived with GDPR, European-style privacy regulation for 20 odd years, 30 years, and we've experienced what that is like. But he's done an amazing job in regulating in this space. Was an innovator when it first started to move into that space, and that view of how you regulate personal information data has been promulgated all around the world, particularly across Asia and Latin America, South America. But as a result, there hasn't been a lot of innovation in the way people regulate the handling of personal information, really genuinely getting into the minds of consumers and helping them to take power back over their data. We have that opportunity now in the UK to do that and to create some genuinely new thinking in this area. We've seen little bits in Singapore, little bits in India. Actually, India is probably the most innovative regime. And it would be great if some of that can now start to come out of the UK and move the dial globally on the right way to regulate data. So the UK, global Britain, taking that opportunity to take a real leadership role in the way we regulate data around the world going forward would be great. And there is that opportunity to do that now.
Wow, what a way to end. Much more to discuss going forward, I'm sure. But to Richard and to Clint, thank you so much for being part of this techUK Talks panel session as part of London Tech Week. It's been a fascinating discussion. Thank you for your insights and your knowledge and bringing it to this discussion. Thank you so much for being part of today, and we hope you enjoyed this session. There are many more as well, either coming up the rest of this week or probably on a link somewhere here where you can click and find out all the other techUK talks, whether it's AI competitiveness in the UK, or the UK's quantum future and quantum commercialization, or where cloud computing is right now. So go and check out the other talks. But I've been Sue Daley from techUK. It's been my pleasure to host today. And with that, I will say, Clint, Richard, thank you very much. And goodbye, everybody. Bye-bye.